As we approach the months ahead, full of events honoring Laurel, we as a congregation have a special opportunity to embrace the holy work of transition, to honor her and honor her legacy. Laurel's glorious 30-year tenure of music, prayer, study, teaching, caring, and friendship is drawing to a conclusion here. And this transition encompasses connection, appreciation, gratitude, sadness, blessing, joy, awareness, and growth for all of us. The multitude of blessings from Laurel over decades is a holy and inestimable gift. As we express our gratitude and love and embrace her in farewell, we can feel the love of being Jewish that she's shared with us, and we will carry that on in strength. These upcoming events, planned in concert with Laurel's wishes, are the path forward for us through this transition period and also beyond. Today marks the first of our gatherings, and as is so very appropriate for Laurel, who keeps Torah at the center of all that we do, that study and shared study in such a way should be how we cross the threshold to the season of appreciation. So join us. We're savoring the teachings, the insights, the love and honor of our most amazing Laurel, now and in times to come.
Oh, who wrote that? That's amazing.
Isn't that great? I should write all my addresses here. And I have to say the Lehitro Oath Committee with Shirley and Marjorie have just been phenomenal to work with, and it is an honor to be working alongside them through this process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you have done and continue to do. Would you care to bring some words to us?
Yeah, let's have words of prayer. We'll do our Matovu and our morning blessings. I think we decided we do have the morning blessings on, we can put them on the screen. So we'll begin with a Matovu, and I never mind when people want to unmute. I know Steve Bright, I always love singing with Steve Bright, but anyone else who would like to. Matovu, and it's on page 77 if you have your Siddur with you.
I'm sorry, I should have mentioned just a moment ago, we're going to be recording this session. We're not broadcasting over live stream, but we are going to be recording. So just wanted for people to be aware of that. And I'll share more about the format of our Torah study after we dive into it together.
Great. Matovu, how good it is. I, The ending is really important. If you hold it long enough, we have a great chord there. Pages 79 and 80, morning blessings, or you can, should we do them on the screen as well? If you'd like. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sechvivina, l'hafrin ben yom uven laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'cholim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish avumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Matir Asurim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Zokeh Kifufim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Sha'asa likol tzorki. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher hechrin mitzadei gaver. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozei Yisrael bigvura. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Otei Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hanoten layayef koach. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Hama'avir she'na me'enai, Utenuma me'afapai. And if you'd like to unmute for one moment here, we can do our blessing of Torah, so the sounds and the delight come from all our own sanctuaries in our own household. On 80, we need our own screen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Kishanu
Mitzvanu la'asot
Divrei Torah.
And Selah. Boker Tov, Shabbat Shalom l'kulam.
Shabbat Shalom. So welcome once again, and what a delight again to gather together for study and for delight and for learning together. It is my very great pleasure to introduce Rabbi Marc Margolius to our community today. The Rabbi is Senior Programs Director at the Institute for Jewish Spirituality, for IJS, where he directs programming for lay leaders and alumni of its clergy leadership training program. He also directs the Tikkun Midot program, which integrates Jewish mindfulness with Midot practice, and I believe that more than a few members of our community are engaged in this. Rabbi Margolius hosts IJS's weekly mindfulness program, meditation sessions, and teaches an online program, Awareness in Action, Cultivating Character Through Mindfulness in Midot. Rabbi lives in New York City with his wife, Rabbi Ayelet Cohen, and their children, and I've learned that he's a longtime friend and huge fan of Lorel and her whole family. So this is really a delight. So Rabbi Margolius is going to be sharing some texts on screen with us in just a few moments, and so that we can, the Rabbi's asked, and Rabbi, please tell me if I have this right. The Rabbi has asked that as questions come up during his teaching, please put them into the chat window. I will be monitoring the chat, and I'll make sure that they're expressed to the Rabbi. And if for whatever reason you don't have access to the chat window, if you could please digitally raise your hand. Again, I'll be monitoring that. Those are the two best ways to make sure that any short, concise, well thought out question is presented to the Rabbi. If you absolutely must raise your hand in real life, I will try to see that, but really given how many people we have, the most effective ways for you to get your question out there is the chat window or under the reactions menu to raise your hand. And I will do my very best to feed those questions to the Rabbi as we go. A reminder that we're recording this session just so that you're aware, and I really don't want to give any more break before introducing our Torah scholar this morning, Rabbi Marc Margolius.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Braindell. I'm really so appreciative of that, and I feel incredibly honored and grateful to get to be with you today, and I understand that this is the first in a series of special events to honor Cantor Lorel, and kind of hard to believe. I'm sure even harder for you folks than it is for me, but I want to just begin by noting two things that are quite special about the confluence of events here. One is that, as the Rabbi just said, I am a huge fan of Lorel. and her family going way back. And also a huge fan of Congregation Bethel, the Sudbury River Valley. And this particular Torah study, which for me, I don't remember if I was when I was in rabbinical school or just starting out, I came to Torah study at Bethel with Lorel. It was Parshat Nitzavim Vayelech, I'll never forget it. And I sat there and said, everybody should be doing this. This is great. And at that time, it was not a kind of a standard thing for congregations to gather on Shabbat morning to learn together and to put so much of a focus on that, to have that be a centerpiece of the community, both Shabbat and Torah study. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank, this is a major part of your synagogue's legacy, not only for me personally, but for liberal Judaism and in general. So it's very moving for me to be here and to be sitting here and participating with you as part of that. And then the other thing, I've got lots, I could sit for the next hour just talk about Lorel and how she has inspired me and what I have learned from you. I guess I should speak to you. But I think pieces will come along together. But here's our focus for today. We're going to focus on Parshat Tetzaveh. When I saw it and Lorel said, oh, this is the one, I thought, oh, okay, this is perfect because this is a Torah portion about clothing, primarily about clothing, and we're going to see in a minute. And it sort of leads us to think about the significance and the role of clothing, which of course during the pandemic has taken on a whole new thing. I will freely confess that this is, I think, the first Shabbat morning where I am not wearing jeans. I mean, I do wear pants. So I don't know about you folks. I wear pants consistently, and I'm proud of that fact. But I'm going to admit that I started off by putting on jeans and saying, "What's the difference?" I put on my shirt, put on jeans. I said, "No, what are you doing? This is Shabbat." So I changed. I put on my nice pants, which I have not worn, I think, in the last year, and socks. And eventually maybe you'll see the full view, and you'll see why that's significant. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen for a moment. I'm going to and also, A, my style is not to teach in a frontal way, and B, Bethel's style is not to study in a frontal way, as I understand it. I would love this to be as interactive as possible, given the numbers, and please feel free if you feel a burning urge, if you have a question, a comment, something you want to contribute. As the rabbi said, just put it in the chat box. And, Rabbi, just feel free to, as I said, to cut in and interject so that we can have it be more of a back and forth and less of frontal learning. But I am going to start. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to start by sharing my screen, as we are wont to do in these times. Okay. So just a moment ago, we chanted together from Birchot HaShachar this bracha, this blessing about clothing. It's the kind of thing like, you do Birchot HaShachar like all prayers on a routine basis. And after a while, like you're not really paying attention to what the words say. You don't necessarily have the kavanah, the intention to focus about what is the meaning of this? Why am I saying these words? And what am I supposed to be feeling when this happens? So we said the bracha, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Malbish Rumim, Holy One of Blessing. I'm honoring Bethel here. Holy One of Blessing, you clothe the naked. Well, what does that mean? Why do we say that bracha every day? And how is it in the Talmud, when the Talmud describes the origin of these brachot, it really describes kind of the morning routine that one is doing as you say the bracha. And several of them actually have to do with getting dressed. This is Malbisha Rumim, getting dressed, putting on clothing, but also putting on a belt and putting on shoes and walking. So clothing and what we put on our bodies are significant, and we're meant every morning to pay attention to the significance of our clothes, pandemic or no pandemic. And here's the basic text that we're starting with. Now Tetzaveh is, of course, we're coming close to the end of the book of Exodus. Last week was Parshat Truma, which was the beginning of an extended passage about the collection of the materials and the instructions for building the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Next week will be Kitisa, which will conclude the instructions to Moses about what the people are supposed to do. Then we have the incident of the golden calf, and then Moses comes down the mountain and relays all the instructions about what the people are supposed to do according to what he's heard. So most of the rest of the book of Exodus, after all the action about leaving Egypt and getting and arriving at Sinai and getting the Ten Commandments, and in Mishpatim, all the details, all the fine print, is going to be involved with the creation of the Mishkan. And the focus in this week's Parsha Tetzaveh has to do with the Kohanim. In fact, the spotlight moves away from Moshe. This is the only Torah portion from the beginning of Exodus until the end of Deuteronomy in which Moses' name does not appear. In Zoom terms, that means he's never spotlighted, or his video is never pinned in the course of this parsha. That's a little Zoom Purim humor for you. But this is the main passage we're going to focus on, and especially this one particular verse. I'm going to read some in English, some in Hebrew. Instructions from God to Moses: you shall bring forward your brother Aharon, who's going to be the star of the show, and his sons from among the Israelites to serve me as priests. It's Lecha Anoli, Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, Elazar, Itamar, B'nai Aaron. These are the sons of Aaron who are going to serve as priests along with him. And then verse 2, Va'asita bigdei kodesh, la'aron achicha, lechavod u'letifaret. And we're just going to focus on that one verse, verse 2, chapter 28, verse 2. Make bigdei kodesh, sacral or sacred vestments, sacred clothes for your brother Aaron, lechavod u'letifaret. For here translated as for dignity, the Hebrew is kavod, which is going to be our real focal point. Ulatifaret for or if it didn't have the prefix, it would be tiferet for splendor, for beauty, for adornment. And then they get next are the instructions for what these bigadim, these clothes, are supposed to be made of and what they're supposed to look like. Here are and then verse 4 here, the specific parts of the outfit or the uniform for the priest. Now, it so happens, going to stop sharing for a sec just so we can look at each other. So happens this Torah portion almost always falls right near New York Fashion Week. As it happens, I think, of course, it was virtual this year. I big fan of fashion here, so I always follow that. But it went virtual, and it just escaped my notice this week. But just for future reference, pay attention when Parshat Tetzaveh rolls around. It's a reminder that you can pay attention to whatever the fashion trends may be. And it's interesting that we're living in a time right now where, like, who cares? Who cares what anybody wears? But this is a Torah portion which reminds us, no, clothing is significant. And we're going to really try to focus today on what role clothes can play. And I speak as one who really pays almost no attention to clothing. Okay, so back to the text. And we're going to get to an audience participation here in a second, so stand by. All right. Now, an interesting thing about that word, that phrase, bigdei kodesh, holy garments, sacred garments, is that the root of the word for beged, for garment, bagad, the root meaning means to act or deal treacherously. And so that's from Brown Driver's Briggs, which is the classic Jewish Hebrew English lexicon. And so here is your quiz. Here's your quiz. We just read from Megillat Esther about the role of clothing, because of course when who asked King Ahasuerus what is to be when the King Ahasuerus asked Haman what's to be done to honor someone the king wishes to honor,
Yeah.
Haman answers, well, get him dressed in some great duds and get him on a horse and ride him through town and let everyone salute. So the issue of clothing came up just recently. However, clothing plays a very significant role, especially in the book of Genesis. And actually, Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Libracha, in his writing on this particular parsha, notes that there are a number of times in the book of Genesis where clothing is used as an instrument of manipulation and deceit. That is, to create an appearance that is not true. So in the chat box, okay, Bethelites, this is your chance. Think about, let's make a catalog right now of situations in Genesis where clothing is used to trick somebody or to deceive. See how we do.
Okay.
All right.
Esau.
See how the wheels are turning.
Oh, yeah.
And the prize is Laurel is going to make an incredible Shabbat dinner for you and deliver it to your home.
Oh, that would be nice.
How are we doing?
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it does manipulate each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are we doing? Let's see, Joseph. Okay, good. Idols under Rebecca's cloak. Very good.
It's Joseph and his brothers.
Covering Leah's face. Very good. You guys are good. I knew it. Wow. Yes, the bloody coat. The fig leaf. Jacob wearing fur. Esau's clothes. Tamar and Jacob's, right? Tamar puts on. You guys, I think you're nailing it. I'm pasting into the chat box. This is what Jonathan Sachs beautifully writes. I think you got them all. There's Esav's Bigdei Chamudot, best clothes that Jacob puts on to take Isaac's blessing. There's the Ketonet Pasim, the coat of many colors that Jacob made for Joseph, that the brothers dip in blood. There's the clothes of the prostitute that Tamar puts on to trick Judah. There's the beged that Joseph leaves in the hand of Potiphar's wife when he runs away when she's trying to seduce him.
Right.
And then there's also Bigdei Shesh that Joseph wears and kind of conceals his Hebrew identity, right? So it's just kind of interesting. Any others? I think anyone want to top Rabbi Sachs? No, I don't think we can do that. So that's, but you did great. You did great. So I just find it very interesting, like as in many Hebrew terms that, and it's really Purimdic too, right? That something can be used both to conceal and to reveal. Same theme as we had on Purim about concealing identity and revealing identity in some way. So
a question about head coverings and clothing that just popped up.
Let's see.
The headdress.
Prescribes. There is no Torah portion that describes the wearing of headdress for Israelites that I am aware of, but I will defer to my colleagues on the Bima.
Biblical.
It's actually a minhag, right?
The high priest.
Yeah, the turban.
Right.
But for the Israelites,
Right.
like for us folks.
Yeah.
No. In fact, well, I'll show you my Purim costume later if there's time. Okay. So on the one hand, as they say, we have the idea of clothing as concealing, revealing, creating an impression that may not be true. But we would want to focus on is in what way can clothes, which by their very nature serve to conceal us, what role can they play to reveal something about us by virtue of the fact that we in fact do use clothing? So let's go back. We have a midrash. Missing my share button. And here we go. Okay, so we have a midrash. First of all, we go back to the original function of clothing in Genesis and back in the Garden of Eden when after Adam and Eve eat from the forbidden tree and awaken to their shame and cover themselves. Someone referred to the fig leaf. God dresses them. Vayal bishem v'ya'as Adonai Elohim la'adam u'lishto quote note or garments of skin. And note, I just underscored the letter ayin for or there. And you Bethelites who are savvy, I know, understand that the word or, if you just hear the word or, you don't know whether it's or with an ayin or with an aleph. With an ayin, it's referring to skins. So the plain meaning in Genesis is that God made garments of skin. But we have a midrash in the Torah of Rabbi Meir who says, no. He writes it with an aleph, garments of light. The garments we wear have this dual meaning of yes, they could be skin or they could be polyester, they could be cotton or wool, whatever. They're made of material. They're made of some material. But in some way, they are also meant to be garments of light or garments that reveal the light within us. One more important, personal connection with Bethel is the inscription over your ark, B'orcha Mira Or, which wound up also being which my old synagogue in Philadelphia, Beth Am Israel, borrowed from you folks, and also has the same inscription over the Aron. So the idea of light, of revealing the light within us, and being instruments of light in the world, or as they say, or lagoyim, lights the world. Clothes seem to play a role in that. Okay. Now, what's Rashi got to say about this? Rashi says, really doesn't comment on the verse, on that second verse, but does comment on the third verse and says that when the Torah says l'kodsho lecha nodli, what's going on here? The Rashi is saying that God is telling Moses to sanctify Aharon. What does that mean, to sanctify him? Means to give him a particular role, to install him as a Kohen into the Kahuna. How? By means of the garments here specified, so he may be a priest unto me. That's a little bit hard to unpack. But then he goes on, Rashi, and says, Kahuna, priesthood, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a priest? It means service. In Old French, his vernacular, servantry. So what does it mean to be a priest? In other words, Rashi is translating that verse to say, Moses, take Aaron and dedicate him to a life of service to me. So the clothing plays a role, is an instrument of reminding us that we are meant to live lives of service, or at least in the Torah, that Aaron is supposed to live a life of service. Sforno, the Italian medieval commentator, tries now to break down these two terms, kavod and tiferet, because the Torah says it's for kavod and for tiferet, okay? So what's kavod mean? To render honor and glory to the Almighty through the wearing of such resplendent garments when performing temple service. So in other words, it's by wearing something so beautiful and so awe-inspiring that reflects glory and honor on God. And Tiferet means that the priest should inspire awe as opposed to honor and glory among the Israelites who were considered his disciples, seeing he had the names of all the tribes engraved on these garments right opposite his heart when he wore them in his official capacity. In other words, they see, he's got my name on. He's got my name on, and the name of my tribe on him. He's representing me. I'm him. Now, just to cut away for a second, of course, after the temple was destroyed, and all this was kind of a moot point because you didn't have priests, you didn't have them serving in this function. This idea got distributed to the whole people. In other words, we all became part of Mamlecha Kohanim. We all serve in some priestly role. So what the Torah is describing for as applicable to Aaron and his sons as the priests become later applicable to all Jews, to all Israelites. We're all serving in some function. And there's a little bit of a germ of that idea in that comment by Sforno where people, members of the tribes, would see the Kohen Gadol and see the name of the tribe inscribed on the garment and say, oh, that's me. He's representing me. And be affected in some way by that. So this is really the question. How are we meant to be affected by the clothes we wear? How does it shift an awareness in us? Okay. Any questions? How are we doing?
We're doing well.
Okay, we have just like good running commentary.
There's a good there's wonderful running commentary, especially like these cloaking devices. There's a point raised by Michael that just came up one comment ago.
Okay.
The use of the word avum.
A couple people wrote.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Great. Well, at that, hold on. Here we go. This multitasking is not so easy.
And the point about naked
yes.
or trustworthy has come up a couple times.
Yeah, because it means, what does it mean? It means like, it can mean like wily as well as naked, right? Like the snake.
Yeah.
The serpent was wily. Well, we could go off on a nice riff on that. That's a great observation. But I'm going to stay on my path here. Okay. So I mentioned this idea that what originally applied to the priests, eventually after the destruction of the temple and the kind of democratization of the priestly function, becomes part of our practice, and it becomes codified. Originally, I had the passage from the Talmud that that Maimonides is codifying here, but I figured it's just more straightforward to read what he has to say. Okay, this is interesting. Here on Shabbat, 4 things have been enjoined regarding Shabbat, says Maimonides. 2 of them are in the Bible, 2 are rabbinic and expressed by the Nevi'im, by the prophets. The Torah says, remember and observe, Shamor v'Zachor, or Zachor v'Shamor. The prophets speak of kavod and oneg, which is interesting. The idea of kavod, like, you know, on your challah cover, it often says lichvod Shabbat, right? For the honor of Shabbat v'Yom Tov. The prophets speak about honor and delight about Shabbat, and they get that from Isaiah, called the Shabbat a delight, an oneg, and the Holy One's sacred day, kavod, honor. What is meant by honor, says Maimonides? How do you do that? How do you do honor, kavod? The sages explain this by declaring that each person should wash your face, hands, and feet with hot water on Friday in honor of Shabbat. You should take a nice shower, take a nice bath, get ready for Shabbat, and then wrap yourself in a fringe garment and be seated with kavod, with dignity and expectation of Shabbat, receiving as if he were coming out to meet the king. Interesting, because usually it's the Shabbat queen. The ancient sages used to assemble their disciples on Friday, put on their best clothes, and say, let's go, Lecha Dodi, to meet the king.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Another little side note we could go off on, but staying on their derech here, we honor Shabbat by wearing clean clothes. Okay, everybody take note. It's not too late to change between Torah study and services. Okay, we honor Shabbat by wearing clean clothes. You must not wear weekday apparel on Shabbat. Special Shabbat clothes, your Shabbat best. But if you don't have an additional set of clothing, if you don't have the means for that, you should lower your garment. I think by this he means basically let it hang out to get the wrinkles out, so that your style of dress is not like that of the week. In other words, don't just put on your crumpled something. At the very least, put on a hanger and steam it, and make it look presentable. Ezra ordained that people should wash their clothes on Thursday. Okay, don't wait till Friday. Wash your clothes on Thursday. Of course, they don't have dryers, so they needed a day to let them dry. So you should get ready. So clothing has to do with kavod Shabbat. Okay. All right. Now we're going to a little bit of Chassidut. This is from the Kedushat Levi, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berdichev, Untitled, translated by my colleague and friend, Rabbi Jonathan Slater, who's also, I know, been a guest with you folks. This is what the Kedushat Levi has to say on this. Moses consecrated Aaron to be a garment for the Holy One and the Shekhinah. Emphasis applied. That's my emphasis. That's all we need. What's going on here in this passage? It's not about the clothes. It's about putting on clothes to remind you that you are supposed to be clothing. You, Aaron, are supposed to be a garment for the Holy Blessed One and the Shekhinah. The souls of tzaddikim are vessels for the quality of the supernal ones. That's how we should understand our verse, make Bigdei Kodesh, make sacred vestments for your brother Aaron. May Aaron's soul serve as a garment for the holy, l'chavod u'l'tifaret, for dignity and adornment, which is to say, for the Blessed Holy One and for the Shekhinah. In other words, your clothing should remind you that you are a vessel for the divine. The Anshe Knesset Hagadolah, he goes on. This is a long passage. I'm just going to do some paraphrasing here. But the key here is that the Anshe Knesset Hagadolah, the men of the Great Assembly, the kind of proto-rabbinic, originators of the liturgy, when they wrote or edited the blessing before the Shema, the morning Shema, Ahava Rabbah, used 8 verbs, and each of them aligns with one of these 8 garments that Aaron is supposed to wear. 8 verbs petitioning God, each is associated with one of these 8 garments. The verbs are lahavin, to understand, lahaskil, to discern, lishmoa, to hear, liomod, to learn, lilamed, to teach, lishmor, to observe, laasot, to do, ulkayem, to fulfill. And then he spells out, you all have access to this. I'm not going to spend all the time reading it. But he says, just to give you an example, each verb is associated with a particular aspect of the priestly clothing. To understand has to do with the avnet, the sash. The sash atones for improper thoughts in the heart. That's around, you wear it around the heart, around the chest, around the heart. So lahavin is to the sash to wear. What you're wearing around your heart is to remind you to seek to understand. Lishmoa is associated with the me'il. We must listen, inclining our ears to know our foundational root. Lilmod is associated with the headdress, the mitz nefet. The headdress atones for haughtiness. Okay, so be a learner. Don't be somebody. Don't think you know everything. It's really kind of an instrument for anava, for humility. Be a learner. Focus on what you don't know, not what you think you do know. Develop the capacity to receive the truth from whoever speaks to us. That's really how Pirkei Avot defines wisdom, right? One who learns from everyone. To teach is associated with the tzitz, the diadem on the front of the head. And regarding that, Scripture says it will be on his forehead at all times for l'ratzon, for goodwill. What does that mean? It's for goodwill. So you should look, this has to do with the eyes. You should look favorably on teaching your fellows. Okay, and so on and so on. Okay. All right. Stopping the share for a moment there. Oops. Not mailing anybody here. Okay. So what have we got so far? We went from the pshat, the literal meaning, which, okay, you got your brother Aaron, Moses. Go get him nicely dressed in some really, really special clothes so that people will know, oh, he's got a special job. He's in charge of the sacrificial ritual. And so that's why he's wearing these clothes. And we've gone from that to, no, these are really, they are actual clothes, but they're metaphors. They're also, they're symbolic. They represent something deeper than them. What do they represent? They represent our capacity to identify divine qualities within us that we are meant to be mindful of and pay attention to throughout the course of our day while we're awake and conscious, and do our very best to try to manifest that. So the clothes, just like the mezuzah when you walk in the house, is meant to be a reminder, just like the tzitzit on the fringes on the corners of the garment, on the talit, are meant to be reminders of the mitzvot. Our very clothes are meant to be reminders of these qualities. So as some of those of you who are involved in Musar or Midot practice know, to remind us of these Midot, these sacred qualities, ethical/spiritual qualities that with which we are endowed as human beings made in the image of God. And so, but because we are made in the image of God, we have these godly qualities within us, and the clothes remind us of that in some way. They're meant to remind us. Even like, I never, until this very moment, I'm embarrassed to say I never thought about it even in terms of my glasses. But I say, I wear glasses so I can see better. No, I also wear glasses so I can maybe see more clearly what's actually going on. Because that is why I wear glasses. So let's see. Okay, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're going to do some chavruta in a few minutes. Lest I've been yammering away here. And any questions or just great?
Comments.
No,
great comments. Great comments. All right, I'm going to save all that. Look forward to reading all that. Wow, you guys are so good, so good.
The recent thread is about contrasting the Bethel practice of dressing up, and some people do, some people don't. Is it about contrast, comfort? You're inspiring us. You're inspiring us. Oh, here's a question from Ira. Since clothes are meant to remind us of our divine qualities, does that mean we're all doing ourselves a disservice during the pandemic by not caring about how we dress? Going back to your introduction.
This is a good question. No answer here, but there is something to be said. Well, we're going to get to it because there's something there. I think I can't speak for Bethel of Sudbury River Valley, but as one who is drawn to that way of thinking, that this whole idea like wearing nice but perhaps uncomfortable clothes to synagogue. I'd rather just get comfy and come hang out at synagogue and not focus on clothes, not focus on the externals, particularly a rebellion against American Judaism of particularly the 50s and the 60s, when people would try to outshine each other. Maybe that still goes on these days, not these days, but non-pandemic times. It's a reaction against an overemphasis on appearances, and I think desire to focus not on appearances, but on internal, what's really going on a deeper level. So I'm with you on that. On the other hand, I will say that I am noticing the fact that I am not wearing jeans, but wearing, nice pants, which, by the way, do not fit the way they used to. Another pandemic element here. It makes it. I'm feeling as though it's making a difference for me. That's a thumbs up or a question, Charles?
I spent 45 years in the men's clothing business.
Oh, okay.
Clothing to me represents a position of leadership. And I think that dates back to whenever the creation of man. I would say one wore a better leaf than the other to make a distinction between. But I think in this chapter, clothing represents more of a purity facet, because it's more than obvious, because they spend so much time with the oil. So just the idea of changing clothes makes you different and puts you out ahead.
Oh, thank you for that. That's great. That's great. And thank you also for noting that just before this passage that we're focusing on, the Torah portion begins actually with the description about the oil for the lighting of the lamps in the tabernacle. So that's another area we go into. But the fact that it's not the whole Torah portion is not focused on clothing. It's also focused on the oil that is used for light. So there's a little bit of a connection there between that says that before we start talking about the physicality of clothing, let's bring in an element that reminds us about that roots all of that in a more spiritual inner context. That makes us say, okay, we're going to talk about clothes, but just so you know, we're not talking about clothing in the superficial sense. We're talking about it in the sense that these are things we wear, and how can we use the materiality in which we live in a way that will reveal the deeper spiritual truth that is present in the world, which is basically the challenge of religious living. Okay, I'm going to go back to, we're going to go into Chavruta in, I promise you, just a few minutes, but I want to zero in on this word and the root, kaf vet daled, which is used here, kavod, because the clothing is meant to be for kavod. And again, going back to the root meaning, for those of you who know, I imagine some do, some don't. Every Hebrew word is basically grows out of a three-letter root. And one of the beauties of Hebrew is that you can't totally pin down exactly the meaning of the root. It can have a range of connotations. But the essence of this one, of kavod, has to do with weightiness. It has a secondary meaning of being honored. But its primary, really, the essence of it is that it refers to something that has some heft to it. It has some weight. Sometimes it can be so much weight that it's a burden, but it has, heft is, like, for me, a good word. Something that's a little bit hefty. So we have a few teachings here from Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers. The famous one here from 4:1, where Ben Zoma says, Ezehu mechubad, who is honored? Who is somebody who is honored? Hamechabed et habriot, somebody who honors one's fellow human beings, all of creation. And then the proof text is, Shnei Amar, ki mechabdai achabed uvozai yekalu. For I honor those who honor me, those who spurn me, that's kind of a light way of saying it, will be dishonored. Dishonored is the converse of kavod. Here is kal, light. So there's kavod, which is hefty, and there's kal, which is to treat lightly. So to treat with kavod is to actually take it seriously, to take something seriously. Here's another one a little bit later in the same chapter, Pirkei Avot, where Elazar ben Shemua says, let the honor, Yechi Kavod Talmidav Decha, I'm sorry, that Hebrew got a little garbled there. Let the honor of your student be as dear to you as your own, and the honor of your colleague as the reverence for your teacher, and the reverence for your teacher as the reverence for heaven. So there's a little bit of equivalence there between, not quite synonymous, but some similarity between the Hebrew word kavod and the Hebrew word yirah, awe, reverence. We remember how Sforno was unpacking kavod and tiferet. Those were the terms that he was using about honor and about awe. So it is meant to instill, the clothing is meant to instill that sense of awe. And one more final one from the same chapter, Pirkei Avot, Elazar HaKapar said, and this is going to bring us back to that issue about, well, should we be getting dressed nicely? It says kavod, and this really got garbled. I'm really sorry when it got translated into the PDF. Kina, ta'ava, envy and desire and kavod drive people out of the world. So there is an idea that kavod is not necessarily always a positive thing. And it's understood in Jewish tradition that kavod in this sense is kavod seeking. That is, it is wearing clothing for one's own honor. Say, like, look at me, look at me, look at my taste, look at what I can afford, look at what I've accomplished. It's not for the kavod of the Holy One. It's for our own kavod.
Rabbi,
and yeah,
you
sure.
The holiday that just passed, and a certain individual who mentioned what he wanted in order to be honored, which was about personal aggrandizement, just connecting it to your words from the beginning.
Right. And so it can function, and so clothing can function that way. So kavod is basically a double-edged sword, and it can be, and when we are choosing clothes, then that becomes the question. How do I choose clothing, or how do I wear clothing in a way that it's an interesting question, where that it becomes a spiritual practice of choosing clothing that I can say, provides due self-respect, reflects self-respect, reflects respect for the activity in which I'm engaged, and reflects respect for others as well. That is, it doesn't try to raise me above anybody else. And what are we aiming for with that? And to add another layer to it, how do I choose, as I choose clothing and as I wear clothing, how can I do that in a way that it can remind me of spiritual qualities and ethical qualities that I would like to exemplify that are inspired by my clothes in some way? I don't know if anybody here is like really in either into high fashion, or we have what's her name, from Anna Wintour, any or any Devil Wears Prada types in Bethel. But if you do, the harmonics. What were the harmonics?
Laurel for one. Laurel for one.
Oh, Lord. Very good. Okay, who's keeping score? Arn, you got this, Arn? Okay.
He's married to me. That's amazing.
Aha. It's an advantage. All right, it's an advantage in many ways. All right. So, okay, now we're getting to the poetry. So many of you know Rabbi David Jaffe, your neighbor up there in Boston, wonderful teacher of Musar and Midot, who translates a little section of his Rebbe, Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe here, the Alei Shor, which is a classic of modern Musar. A good basic description of this midah of kavod. When I relate to somebody with due seriousness, when I treat somebody seriously, that's how I honor a person. And if I treat someone lightly, it's like I'm cursing them. The word for light is kal. The word for curse is, kalal. And kavod is external behavior mandated by and appropriate to reality of inner holiness. Okay, so that's both for ourselves and for others. How do we behave, including in dressing? How do we behave in a way that is mandated by and appropriate to a reality, a deeper reality of inner holiness? If we really take seriously this idea that every human being is made and carries the Tselem Elohim, or here at Tselem Elohim Kadosh, the holy divine image, it requires you to treat yourself and others with a certain level of self-respect and respect for others. Okay, 2 quick poems, and then our little chavruta for a few minutes. And remind me, we should end definitely by 10:20?
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yes, 10:20.
Thereabouts? Okay. I think we're doing okay.
We're doing
all right. 2 poems. One is Rilke. I'm going to cut away from it for a sec. Because before I read these poems, I want to just remind us. Okay, so kavod, remember that has that kind of essential meaning of weight. And it's used to describe God in the Torah in a number of places where the kavod of God appears to the people. And also, even next week in Ki Tisa, when after the golden calf and Moses is negotiating with God to go with the people through the wilderness, and God finally agrees, Moses says to God, Hareini na et kavodecha, please show me your kavod. Like what are you really about? Like, let me go into this dense cloud, the dense cloud that represents God symbolically. Is that there is kind of a palpable sense of something, even though there's, nothing. There's a palpable sense of something. And I think we can all think about that when there are moments in our life which feel like weighty moments. We don't mean that literally, but it feels like, wow, this is, it's getting real here. And there's a weight and a palpable sense of presence. It doesn't mean that there actually is literally something there, but we have a sense of weight. So I wanted to offer that before I shared these 2 poems, which both of which I love and I associate with this midah. So Rilke is talking about gravity. Gravity is significant here. How do we understand God as present in gravity itself? How surely gravity's law, strong as an ocean current, takes hold of even the strongest thing and pulls it towards the heart of the world. Everything, each stone, blossom, child is held in place. Only we in our arrogance, oh, this is a good one on a week, when we're so busy planning to go to Mars, only we in our arrogance push out beyond what we belong to for some empty freedom. I think maybe I'll send this to Elon Musk. If we surrendered to Earth's intelligence, we could rise up rooted like trees. Instead, we entangle ourselves in knots of our own making and struggle, lonely and confused. Okay, that's one. Here's another one. In this one, it kind of purports that the soul itself, that is, that the spirit itself, that divine element in us, plays a role here as well. Someone explained once how the pieces of what we are fall downwards at the same rate as the universe. The atoms of us falling towards the center, just like Rilke said, towards the center of whatever everything is. And we don't see it. We only sense their slight drag in the lifting hand. So if everyone, just lift your hand for a second, and you could feel like, oh, the atoms are falling, and that's gravity, right? There's a little drag. That's what weight is, that communal process of falling. And furthermore, these atoms carry hooks like burrs, hooks catching like hooks, like clinging to like. And that's what keeps us from becoming something else. And why in early love, we sometimes feel the tug of the heart snagging on another's heart. I love that. It's a little bit like, a little like Velcro. They connect. Only the atoms of the soul are perfect spheres without those burrs. We have no means of holding on to the world, or perhaps no need for holding on. And so they fall through our lives, catching against nothing, like perfect rain. And in the end, he wrote, they mix in that common well of light at the center of whatever the suspected center is or might have been. So I just want to review that for a second. I just think it's an amazing poem. Pieces of what we are fall downwards at the same rate as the universe. The atoms of us falling towards the center of what everything is. We don't see it, okay? There are atoms that have these burrs that catch. That's maybe the materiality. And then there's the atoms of the soul. And those don't catch on anything. They just fall naturally. They're in, we're kind of always, I'm no quantum physicist, but I think I like the idea that we live in a field of energy always that is like those atoms of the spirit that are flowing through and that are reigning over us. Frictionless, yes. Okay. And now, at the end of the Parsha, one more section here. There are instructions here for what's to be done on the bottom of the bottom hem of the coat of the priest. Pomegranates, pa'amone zahav, and bells, golden bells, all around the rim. A golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate, rimon and pa'amon, alternating, like not literally a pomegranate, like a pom-pom, and a golden bell and a pom-pom all around the hem of the robe. Why? Aaron will wear it while officiating so that the sound is heard when he enters the sanctuary, when he enters the Mishkan, and when he leaves it, so that he doesn't die. Just wanted to throw that in. Oh my God. I wanted to throw that in because I love that idea that we can, even if we don't have bells on our clothing, we can imagine that we did. And that wherever we go, there's a little bit of a tinkling that reminds us of the function of the clothing. Just one more little reminder in our system of Jewish reminders that keeps us alert to the qualities that we want to manifest. Okay. just gonna skip here to Pirkei Avot. Now I say this because I love this because of Laurel being such a dear friend, and Arnie and the whole family. This wonderful teaching from Pirkei Avot from Yehoshua ben Parachia, who says, "Aselecha Rav, make yourself a teacher. Kanelecha chaver, acquire for yourself a chaver, a friend. Vehevei dan et kol adam l'chavsachut. Judge all people with the scale weighted in their favor." In other words, give everyone the benefit of the doubt. Get a teacher, get a friend, give everyone the benefit of the doubt. And we have Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who says, just as we need to judge others on the side of merit, in other words, one of the ways we can practice kavod, treating people with seriousness, honoring the divine in each person, is to, as he puts it, even those who appear wicked, to find within them nikudot tovot, points of goodness, and to do the same for ourselves. Then you'll be able to seek out and gather more points of goodness. And from these are made nigunim, wordless melodies, a process of collecting your own good spirit from the realm of darkness and depression. That's from Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. He says, you want to know how to give everyone the benefit of the doubt? Just look for the good in every person, including yourself. Always look for, when you catch yourself looking at the parts of yourself that you're less proud of or that you're not so happy about, put that aside and instead try to remember something good about yourself. Focus, and the same, if something disturbs you about somebody else, don't dwell on that. Try to look for something good in them. That's how we practice kavod. Okay, so finally, here's your chavruta question, and I think we're going to have 10 minutes for this. Okay. How do you feel about this practice that Nachman says? Seeking out nikudot tovot in others, including those who disturb you. Can you imagine it is possible to retain some judgment about them, that is, people who disturb you, while also honoring them as fellow human beings created in the divine image? I think this is the question for our time, right? How can we have judgments about others? Like there are real differences, there are real divisions that are serious and deep. Can we still have those judgments and still find a way to practice kavod, put on our clothes of kavod and practice kavod by looking for the good in them, or for yourself? Can you imagine focusing on the points of goodness within you instead of dwelling on your mistakes and shortcomings? What might get in the way for you? And is there, if you actually want to operationalize this, like really do this in your life, like just say this week, I'm going to try this out. Is there a focus phrase? Is there a word or just a little, a short phrase, a mantra that you could use? Or is there some, while I'm describing this, are you thinking of some situation in your life? Like it could be somebody who's like, yeah, I could do that, but I don't think I can do it with this person. This person really gets to me. I'm not sure that I could ever really focus on my good points. In fact, I don't really like the idea of focusing on my good points. So can we go into dyads for 8 minutes? Can we do that?
Sure.
Yeah. 8 minutes.
How many folks should be in a room?
Just 2 in a room. I'm sorry, I know we're doing this on the fly. Let's just do 2 in a room.
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
And let me see. I hope maybe we can put the link to the document back in the chat in case people don't have the questions. But I hope you get the questions. Okay. And there are 8 minutes. There's 2 of you. Just optional sharing. You don't have to share if you don't want to, but make sure you leave room for each other. About 4 minutes each. It could be give and take. Whatever you want to do with that. What does kavod mean for you in terms of looking for the good points in others, particularly people who are you might struggle to do that with? And we'll be back at 10:15. Welcome back.
Thank
Here we
you.
are.
That was fun. All right. So I'm going to wrap up. I get the last words here. I'm going to have to do really more quickly than I wanted, but it's okay. It's my fault.
No, take your time. Take your time. Unfold.
Okay. Well, 2 things. One is, before I share this, 2 things. One is, the reality is that the irony, incredible irony, is that if it weren't for attention and interest in clothing, I would definitely not be here because I never would have met Laurel. The only reason I met Laurel was in Jerusalem at a bus stop. What bus? 18 bus? 15 bus. The 15 bus in Rehavia, because Laurel was wearing a purple dress from a place in Northampton called Good Things Collective. And my wife recognized that immediately. I did too, for that matter. That's a Good Things Collective dress. And so we went over to Laurel, and the rest is history. But had you not been wearing that dress, you've just been wearing something else, we would never have met. We met because of Good Things Collective. I mean, come on.
And purple clothing.
Purple. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. So there's an amazing, I don't know what, serendipity to to marking this chapter, end of this particular chapter and the beginning of the next chapter for you, Laurel, by bringing attention to clothing. And I do want to end with, I thought this is just like also too good to be true. Rabbi Nachman and Likutei Moharan goes on after that passage about searching for the Nikudot, and he says this, and there's nothing to add to this. He writes, or he taught, know too that someone who's capable of making these melodies, remember that if you can find the good points, you can create nigunim out of that. Someone who's capable of making these melodies, that is gathering the good points that are to be found in each Jew, each person, even a Jewish sinner, she can lead the communal prayers. One who leads the communal prayers is called the Shlichat Tzibur, this messenger of the people. She must be sent by all the people. She must gather every good point that is to be found in each of the congregants. All these good points are merged in her so that when she stands up to pray, it is with all this good. That is the meaning of being a Shlichat Tzibur. That's what it means to be sent by the people, the messenger of the people. That is, she must have within her this exalted aspect as a result of which all the points are drawn to her and become merged within her. And someone who can make the aforementioned melodies, that is, she's capable of judging all people favorably, even the rabble and the wicked among the Bethelites, because she persistently searches and seeks to find the good points in all of them, through which melodies are made, as explained above. This tzaddiket, since she's on this level, is capable of being the cantor and messenger of the people. That is, she can lead the communal prayers because she has within her this aspect, which is a necessary requirement to be a truly fitting messenger of the people. She must possess the aspect whereby all the good points are drawn to her and are merged within her, so that she's capable of gathering all the good points to be found in every Jew, even a Jewish sinner, as explained above. All right, so Rabbi Nachman is not could use a good editor, but the point is made. And Laurel, I couldn't imagine a better text, or text that describes you and what you bring, and and the role that you've played for this community for all these years, and what incredible blessing you have been. And of course, I'm thinking back to Larry Kushner's story about his interview with you, knowing that you were the right person to be the Shlichat Tzibur for this community without hearing you sing a note, because of the midot that you exude and exemplify. So, and I'm just grateful to be your friend, grateful to have a chance to share this community with you, and may you have many, many blessings for the next chapters to become.
Amen.
Amen, amen. Yasher koach. Thank you, dear one.
Yasher koach. Yasher koach. Rabbi, so this exquisite Torah. Thank you so much for everything that you brought to us, the way you wove us together with your own heart and our ancient texts, and holding us and holding Laurel together, just so gently and so warmly. Thank you also again to our Lehitraot Farewell Committee, whose organization and vision helped make this possible, and to everyone who joined here this morning, these wonderful bright souls, and we are illuminating Shabbat together. And as we begin to draw to a close here, I turn back to Laurel for
Yes,
Kaddish Rabbanan.
yes. And we will take a moment in tremendous gratitude for teaching and for our being able to study together and to learn continually to be the students that we want to be. I think we have a shared screen for Kaddish Rabbanan. Feel free to unmute yourself if there is a name you would like to mention now of someone you are remembering before we say Kaddish together.
Lorraine Berman.
Phyllis Halpern.
Ruth Levine.
Yehuda David Ben Nachum Tzvi.
Beverly Gedron, Jack Ling, Jill Mailer, Paulo Kinnell.
Anthony Paradis.
My father, Edward Gerber.
Ben Chana Gedalia.
Lydia Hughes.
Lawrence Ferdinand.
My uncle Steve
Ben
Sorkin.
Avraham Vifrado, Chana Tziv, Bat Avram B'Tzipora.
Bessie Moore.
Chick Corea.
My uncle Steve Sorkin, Shalom Simcha ben Yosef Etzel. My grandfather Morris Moshe ben Machli Yitzchak Cohen.
Completing the first year for my mother, Maxine Lowe Boland.
My mother-in-law, Jeanette Kazin.
Zecher Tzadik Livracha. May remembering the righteous always bring us blessing. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shnei Rabbi.
Amen.
Amen.
Yamad yivrach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei.